now. And Veronica, if you would also record as
I
well.
don't have permission.
Oh, for goodness sakes. Um, hey everyone. It is great to see you. I am
Wait,
Stephen
I'm so
Neely,
sorry. Do I record on computer or cloud?
Cloud.
Okay. Thanks.
Um, good. My name is Stephen Neely. I'm a professor of eurythmics at Carnegie Mellon University, and am your co-host at the virtual Dalcroze meetup. And we're so excited to welcome everyone to our last meetup of the year. I'd like to introduce my wonderful colleague Veronica Boleski, who is our co-host.
Hello. I am gonna copy the agenda into the chat.
Very good. Our routine now, is this the 18th time? Is
This
this
is number 19.
19? For goodness sakes, it has been quite a year, I have to say. We have learned so much and made so many friends and reconnected with all sorts of old friends. And it has been such a joy. Veronica and Emma and I met earlier today and just spent a bit of time just being so pleased with how much fun and how much we've learned, having a chance to connect with all of you through this year, this most crazy year. So thank you from all of us for your generosity and your time and your ideas and your support for the community. It's been really wonderful and personally absolutely significant and enriching. So thank you. Our our routine, most all of these past 18 meetups, has been to take about 3 minutes at the beginning and throw everybody into a random breakout room and let you introduce yourself just to meet a couple people. We ask you to tell everybody your name and where you're from, where you're currently located, and who do you teach. Your name, where are you located, and who do you teach? And you got about 3 minutes. It's not very much time, so you better get going. Tell everybody good morning or good evening or good afternoon or whatever it is wherever you are. Here you go. You ready?
Yep.
And go. And I hand it over to Veronica. Are you on the screen? I've lost
I
you.
am.
There you
Just a
are. Hey,
second.
do you want to introduce our
Um,
speakers?
well, before we do that, I'll just quickly plug the last masterclass of 2020. Andrew Davidson is this weekend, either Saturday or Sunday, depending on which part of the globe you're in. So sign up if you have not yet. Invite your friends, invite your colleagues, invite your parents and siblings. I don't know.
Yeah.
Them.
Andrew is great, and he's someone who we purposely invited because we suspect not as many people know him, but honestly, he is outstanding. He's very exciting. He's very cool, and he has spent a lot of his career in the theater as a staging director, as a music director. And his main, I believe I have this right, that his main day job is a full-time teacher working with adult actors, adult professional acting students. And so he's an interesting guy. He's also a candidate for the diplome in Geneva, and so totally worth showing up to. I'm very excited about it myself.
And Anthony says he will be a guest on the new Dalcrozian podcast.
Coming up, which we were happy to plug as well, our good friends Lauren Hodgson and Anthony Molinaro have now successfully submitted a fourth podcast of the new Dalcrozian. The fifth one's not up yet, is it?
Coming out tomorrow
Coming
morning.
out tomorrow. I'm excited. I tell you what, I've just been loving them. I'm so geeky and into it and really excited for us to have our very own podcast. I feel like it's our podcast. I have nothing to do with it, but it feels like it's part of ours.
No, you do. You definitely do.
So I'm just so impressed with the production values and the smarts of it all. It's very well put together. So congratulations to the two of you. I hope you'll feel encouraged to keep on going and do many, many more.
Cool. And then last announcement is season 3 of VDM is coming your way. We have a lineup of 4 masterclass teachers and more VDM meetups about a similar schedule like we just did. And we will put that up very soon. We are
Very
confirming
soon. We're
2 final details.
this close to being able to say all the announcements, but it's a very exciting roster. We are again really pleased with how it's come together. So there's all sorts of excitement coming in the new year. Good.
Okay, so we have 2 presentations today. Nicole Brockman has kindly agreed to talk about asynchronous teaching for adults. And then Cindy has something to share about teaching teachers how to teach music who are not musicians. So that one made me scratch my head a little bit, but I'm very curious to hear what she has to say. And it looks like Nicole has shared a PDF in the chat. So if you have not seen that, that is available. And Nicole, the floor is yours. Thank you.
We've negotiated about 10 minutes for Nicole to do her initial presentation, and then we've got a nice amount of time for both of our presenters for us to do questions at the end. So everybody get ready for your questions so we can fill it all up. Nicole, let's go.
Oh, hey there, everybody. Hi. I'm so glad to be able to talk to you all. This is a thing that I've wanted to talk about for a little while, and I'm glad that the VDM format has allowed me to do that. So let me tell you what happened to me. I teach Eurythmics as part of a first-year seminar, in which people come in and out of a rotational kind of system. And so this means that in spring 2020, what would have happened was that people would have come into a rotation and had about 5 weeks with me, and then would have had about 5 weeks with 2 other professors. So that's what would have happened. And then, COVID, that sort of happened. And so we decided that we would do this all as routine incompletes, I guess, in the fall. And then, I thought I had won that battle. Like, I thought that, oh yeah, I got this. We're going to do it just as incompletes in the fall. And then my school informed me that, no, you didn't win that fight. We need you to come up with some sort of totally asynchronous thing. It's a thing that could substitute for what people would have ordinarily done in the Eurythmics module in the spring. So yeah, I wasn't super happy, but welcome to life. So this is what happened. So I'm gonna share with you, and I will share these things with you in the chat if they are not immediately available via the absolute immediacy of Zoom. But I'll share with you what we did. So this is what happened. The students that I had did not know anything about Eurythmics at all, but they did have the advantage of knowing me. So they trusted me perhaps more than they might have otherwise. I'm going to put into the chat the document that shows about all the things that they did. So here's what we did. I'm going to try to share my screen with you here. Okay, so if this is working, then you can see that here's what I did with these students. So they would have ordinarily done something in real time, but because this was a thing that happened in the spring that they then had to accommodate in the fall, we didn't have a time bank for them. So this was a thing that had to be done totally asynchronously. And that is not ideal, obviously. Nobody wants this, right? Like, let's be clear, nobody wants this, okay? But if you have to do this, here is a thing that you can do. And so what I did with them, if you are seeing my screen right now, is that they did a couple of readings. They did a couple of videos, two of the three of which were not actually Dalcroze videos, right? And so I wanted them to see this Bourgeois Claire de Lune video. I will be more than happy to provide links to anybody who wants them afterwards. I really wanted them to see this Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun video. I'll show that for just a second. Things are happening. Just wait. Okay, and so you can see that this is a thing that combines movement with music, but that necessarily isn't totally a Eurythmics point of view. And so my goal with my students was to emphasize to them what is and is not Eurythmics, and what are the things that we can learn from things that provide a combination of music and movement, even if they're not technically what those of us who are purists might say are Eurythmics. Like, what is the thing that we might learn from those things? So it has definitely been a good experience. I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this, get out of this video, which it's a great video. But I love James Ross. He did some marvelous things here with the University of Maryland Symphony Orchestra. It's not necessarily Eurythmics, but that doesn't mean that it's not without value to us. So so that's what I'm doing. So when I did my my course online, I'm doing things like this where I say, okay, look at this video. What do you think is Dalcrozian about it? And what do you think is not Dalcrozian about it? And can we have a really interesting discussion about that? DePauw is DePauw is where I teach. We are a school where we place a high priority on kind of talking about things. And so in other places, you might just do an activity and then not have a discussion, but we're all about the discussion here. So I guess that is one of the things that makes us what we are. And so I'm happy to share with anybody the discussions that my students had about things like what you just saw, the the University of Maryland Orchestra, and anything else. I'm totally happy to share that with you guys. I'm super pleased with what they did. Let's be clear. Uh, I am not saying that what I did online was in any way an equivalent experience to what could happen when we are all in the same place. So let's be clear about that. That being said, I'm pretty pleased about what my online students did. They did an experience with a variety of components where they heard some things, they responded to some things, they wrote discussion posts about some things, and they did a plastique at the very end about in regards to a particular piece that I gave them. It was a piece that I played on the piano, and it was a piece that I wrote for my Dalcroze license certification. So thank God that ended up being useful for something, but that's
Nicole,
how it ended up.
if you wouldn't mind finishing in a
Right,
bit, and then we'll move
Oh,
on.
look, right? Like, oh, thank God that ended up being useful. Great, fantastic. So I wanted them to do something that didn't have a score that they could look at. I wanted them to do something that where they had to figure it out through listening. That was what I wanted to do. So I'm sorry that this is slightly not super put together as
Well, this is
a thing that you could reproduce for your students, but I would be happy to take questions and talk about comments and all of that stuff.
That sounds great. Thank you so very much. We have so much to discuss from what you shared. Thank you.
Thank you. And just speaking at that attachment that was given, there's all sorts of things in there that can be discussed as well. Moving on.
I'm gonna pass the mic to Cindy if she's around. Cindy, are you ready? Looks like she's taking care of something. Are you good, Cindy?
I am so good. I was just borrowing my children.
Oh, great.
I homeschool. So I thought, hey, it's going to be more fun if I've got someone doing things with me. So I'm borrowing my children who are making a lot of noise in the background. Sorry. It's nice and quiet, Scarlett. You guys can just sit there for a minute. Okay, so help. I have to teach music. Now, when I was in primary school, which is, I guess, elementary school for the US, I was lucky. I had two wonderful teachers at the school who took choir, did percussion, did all kinds of exciting things like recorder and put on musicals. But as I've grown up and gone to university and started teaching, I realised that most students don't have a teacher like that at their school. In Australia, if you are lucky, when you're doing your undergraduate teaching degree, you get 17 hours of music tuition. That's it. And for most teachers, that is literally all they ever get. If you start when you're doing postgrad, if you come in as someone who's already got a degree and you're just adding on your Masters of Education, that might be 10 hours. And then these teachers are expected to go out and teach children from the ages of 5 to 12 music. No wonder they're so terrified. So what tends to happen is that in 2 out of 3 primary schools in Australia, there is no music. There's just nothing. They might sing a few songs or do a bit of body percussion occasionally, but there's no music because there's just not the resources. And unless they have a principal that's prepared to bring in a specialist, it just doesn't happen. But it's part of the curriculum, so they're expected to teach it. So these poor teachers are stuck in the middle of the educational expectations and the experience they actually have, which is very small. So I've decided to do a little project. It's a very simple little project. The idea is to create 5-minute music exercises and games for teachers that they can just pull out of a box, something similar to this. They just pull it out, choose a card and do an activity off there. The idea is that it'll be 5-minute activities that they can do after lunch or at the beginning of school to help the kids settle and re-engage and really work on their active listening skills. So, what else did I want to say? I wrote something down, but I never read it. I always ignore my notes. So one of the local schools, I teach the vice principal's daughter, and I thought, I'm just going to ask, do you do much music at school? And she said, well, apart from the kids who pay to be part of band, there's nothing. There's just nothing. So I asked, if I prepared this little thing, would you be prepared to trial it out, to test it out with all the teachers? And she was like, yes, definitely. Lots of big head nodding for that one. So that was really encouraging. So the idea is that these things will be cross-curricular, so they won't just be music. There'll be drama involved and art, obviously physical education, maybe a bit of maths, some language as well, so that we're really kind of tying it into all the objectives for their curriculum, which is really so important for teachers. So the activities will be built around really common songs and chants that most Australians will know already. As we all know, you always go from the known to the unknown. Biggest chance of success if we do that. And I really want these teachers to feel confident and empowered, not just to do the activities I've given them, but to see that they actually already know a heap about music and they can use what they already know, what they might do with their kids or just walking around, and translate that into their own activities eventually. Sorry, there's a rabbit in the background running around. My children, what can you do? So some of my favourite activities so far have been a musical approach to the game, What's the Time, Mr. Wolf? Do you have that in other countries? Does anyone know What's the Time, Mr. Wolf? Okay, so it's a really simple game. All you do is someone stands at the front, they're not facing the class, and they say, what's the time, Mr. Wolf? The kids behind them say, what's the time, Mr. Wolf? And then the teacher says a number like 3, and they take 3 steps forward. And they keep doing different numbers until they get really close, and then it's like, what's the time, Mr. Wolf? And the wolf turns around and says, it's dinner time, and chases the kids all the way back to the beginning. It's great fun, really well-named game here, and a perfect thing to start for with teachers. So my children have never done this, so we're going to do an experiment with them, see how it works. You never know, could, might not. Okay, so Scarlett and Rupert, can you go stand at the other end of the room? I'm just going to put you here, hopefully you can still hear me all. Okay, so it starts off at a really basic level with how many sounds, Mrs. Fox, because obviously I'm not a wolf, I'm a fox. So how many sounds, Mrs. Fox? So that's the question you have to ask.
How many sounds, Mrs. Fox?
And you take that many steps forward. Then you ask again.
How many sounds, Mrs. Fox?
Oh, very close now. Ask again.
How many sounds, Mrs. Fox?
Dinner time sounds. So, as you can see, it kind of works already. And that's the first level. So the second stage to that is a little bit more advanced, a little bit more active listening, thinking. So this is what's the rhythm, Mrs. Fox?
Ooh, what's the rhythm, Mrs. Fox?
Okay, so listen carefully and then step the rhythm you hear. Good.
What's the rhythm, Mrs. Fox? What's the rhythm, Mrs. Fox?
Excellent, thank you guys. So that's that one, and you can add all kinds of other things. This week in the studio we've been doing Christmas rhythms, so I'll play them the beginning of a Christmas carol, and they have to see if they can step that. Bonus points if they know it. You could also use this to teach repertoire, so you could be starting them with the rhythms before they even know they're starting to learn a song. So I thought that was kind of cute. The other activity I want to show you requires something very important.
Slinky.
A slinky. So I use a slinky in my classes all the time. It is the perfect teaching tool. Use it for pitch, so they can follow, you can't see the slinky at all, sorry. So they can follow the shape of the pitch when it goes up and down. And this activity is based on something I did in a class with a fabulous dance and movement teacher called Virginia Norris. She lives in Perth. She's nearly completed her Dalcroze certificate, but she is amazing. Every class with her is just such a joyful revelation of music. So this one starts with a shape. So I'm going to make a shape with the slinky. I'll hold it close so you guys can see it. And then the kids try and copy that shape with their bodies. Okay. And you could get all kinds of interpretations of this. Oh, Scarlett, I like that. She's totally upside down. Can you see that? Good bridge shape there. Rupert's just on the floor. Excellent. That sounds normal. Okay, next shape. See if you can do this one. Oh, you've chosen to go flat. That would look like this. Excellent. That's okay. You don't have to be perfect. As you can tell, they've never done these activities, so it's the first time for them, which is a good practice. All right, so then, now, make your own shape, and I'm going to try and copy one of your shapes. Which one will it be? Okay. All right, so let's see if I can copy Rupert's shape. Well, it looks something like this. It's upside down with the bottom in the air. Excellent. Then the next step might be that they follow, the kids follow the slinky with the voice. So you're starting to kind of do sirens, but with a little bit more physical shape to it. Okay, so see if you can follow. You might have to sit up for this one. See if you can follow this shape with your voice. You ready? So start off low. Like that. And then you could, of course, have the kids controlling what the class does after that. So that's how I've started with my project. So far, there's been as many problems as there have been solutions, but this is where I'm starting, and hopefully we'll end up somewhere interesting. Thank you, guys. You may go now.
Thank you so much, Cindy and Rupert. And what was your girl's name?
Scarlett.
Scarlett. Thank you so much.
Outstanding. Such good stuff, all of it. And thank you, Nicole, again for showing us some of the things that you were working on. I immediately now would like an hour to talk about all the things that we just saw, because there's so many things that we could get into. But I'll let you all lead. So it's 34 past the hour. We got about 20 minutes or so that we can get a little bit of talking in. So do you have a comment or a question for either of our presenters? There's lots we could talk about here. Well, I'll just start then by saying that obviously, Cindy, I mean, we'll have to have you back for more cards. That seems like there's going to be a whole stack of cards. Well, we want to see the rest of the cards that are in there. I'll also just want to point out that what Cindy's doing is my very favorite model for what I believe a Dalcrozian should be all about, which is the experiment. When Jacques Dalcroze began his work, he did not begin it because he had a book full of all the right ideas. What he had was a series of problems that he was looking for solutions to, and then he attacked it not as someone who knew the answers, but someone who had a hunch that the answers were over there in that direction. And so then set to experimenting. And with experiment comes failure and comes success and comes things we repeat and things that we change. But I mean, that to me is it. And I've for a couple years now been thinking I need to write the article that says, what are you learning from? Like, what are you experimenting on? Where is your research as a Dalcroze teacher? And if what you're actually doing is just teaching all the same things over and over, I'm not sure you're really living the life yet. Whereas what Cindy's demonstrating for us is really an exploration where she's learning as much as her students are. So really outstanding there. Okay, folks, don't let me talk. Come on, who's got something to ask or say? Veronica.
I want to steal your game about the time Mr. Fox, or sorry, Mrs. Fox. And I'm just trying to think about how do I make it work in a situation where I'm supposedly staying 6 feet apart. All the kids are staying 6 feet apart. And yet they still like sometimes play tag based games in PE, and kindergartners just can't, they're like magnets. So they're all touching anyway. So like, is there a way, because like there is great fun in the whole like being chased, right? Being chased back and someone tags you. So I don't know, I'm just wondering, I haven't thought about this, but does anyone have ideas for how to make it work when we're supposed to be staying 6 feet apart, but there's a little bit of wiggle room?
Well, I never actually chase them. So I've just been doing the chasing via sound, which means that there's no touching.
So like, can anyone get out? Because that I think motivates kids a lot. If they're like, I have to do my job so I don't get out.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
you're not at the wall in time or something like that.
I haven't had because I don't teach group classes, I haven't had the opportunity to do this with large groups yet. So I'm imagining what will happen, and I haven't thought about how they could get out. Could just be the last one who's there is out.
I see Stephanie said in the chat here, kids could stay on their own line. So if there was some like seam on the tiles on the floor or a tape line that was marked on the floor, depending on how large of a room, you maybe could have every student have their own line. You could use what they in theater they call spike tape, which doesn't leave any residue behind and has, comes in a million different colors. So you could possibly decorate your room with a lot of different colors. Anthony.
I mean, maybe with a little bit of older elementary kids, they could be the ones who are Mrs. Fox, right? And they could clap the rhythm, they could improvise the rhythm that the other children could do. And then you as the teacher, whoever's the last one to the wall or whatever, you could call on to be the next Mrs. Fox. And then that way there's a game to it, but it's not an out where they have to sit out and cry.
I'm wondering if there's a version of it that could be an alternate version, a version of it, a variation on it that could be done in a circle with all the students standing in a large circle. So their outmost part would be the widest circle. And then as students took turn, different students would slowly walk closer to the middle of the circle. And if the circle could slowly collapse and then the whole circle run away from themselves. So then the whole point would be get away from each other rather than all running to the same corner of the room. There might be a solution in there.
I love how many ideas are coming out of this. Everyone's just really taking it. It's great.
This is what we're supposed to be about. Rebecca, I saw a hand.
I was thinking the same thing as you were, Stephen. But they could be in a circle. So they start in a big circle, and if Veronica, if you're concerned about them getting too close to each other, you could either always have a signal that says go back to the circle, or you could add into it that this kind of like you're going up the scale means go into the circle, and you're going down the scale goes out of the circle, or if it's a high note or a low note or something. So you have control of how close they get to each other without them knowing you have control of how close they're getting to each other. Does that make sense?
Love it. I love it.
Sounds fun. I want to play it now.
I should add as well that the idea behind these was that the activities either needed, I know I played it on piano, but the activities either need little or no specialist equipment, because if you've got a primary school that doesn't have music trained people, you might not have any equipment. So everything is going to be designed to use either a slinky, a pair of tapping sticks, or a scarf, with obviously suggestions for if they've got instruments, they can use those as well.
Yeah. I wonder if a small xylophone is approachable for a non-musician. And side note, slinkies were invented right beside my hometown in central Pennsylvania, here, 2 hours from Pittsburgh. I grew up, my buddy mowed the Slinky lady's lawn. That's how close we are to the Slinkies. We
Was it like a mansion? Did
Yep.
they have a huge lawn because of all the Slinky money?
Yep. There was definitely a mansion, like not mansion, but a very big house in the same district that my parents graduated from high school. So we know all about the Slinkies. The other, can we just talk a little bit about what Nicole started to present? Some of the ideas that she was doing. Did anyone have any questions or comments about some of that? Johanna?
Yeah, I was wondering when you said that you gave them some readings, what did they read before they did anything for the video? Nicole?
So they read some things. I thought about having them read some things that were written by Émile Jacques Dalcroze, but at the last moment, I decided not to have them do that. And so they read some things from what we would think are secondary sources, because they were more relevant to me and they avoided some of the problems that I didn't want to get into given the circumstances of the class. And so they read some things from Stephen Moore and Julia Schneverly-Brand book,
The Rhythm Inside.
Yeah. So they read a thing from that, and they read some other things that I could find for them. I would have liked for them to read some things that were by Jacques Dalcroze, but I had a hard time finding things that didn't also get in the way of my school's attitude towards racism and sexism. And so that was, I had a little bit of a spat with Martine about on Facebook about that. That's not really resolved. And so I decided to go with things that I could be sure that I didn't have to worry about. And so they read some things from The Rhythm Inside and from other secondary sources.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Very good.
It was wonderful. I mean, the Opera Media for Fun, it's so good.
Who else? Who else has a question or comment for either of our presenters? Chris?
Yeah, this is kind of a general question for the room based on what both our presenters talked about. Presenting material that doesn't come right from the mouth of Émile. I had the same problem, working with students online, but I found that the online discussion boards, just like Nicole, they really love talking about their experience. I mean, this doesn't work well as much with the little ones that Cindy might work with, but I love that because as long as I designed a discussion around what was your experience, it still makes the focus not what do we know, but what have we done, And I feel like anytime you read anything by Dalcroze, that's all he's talking about anyway. So I don't know, COVID, we're doing our best, but what do you think of that experience versus knowledge? And doesn't that play into what Nicole chose to present?
Yeah, I think it's very good. And I think it's a really important distinction, and so central to so much of our classwork. We were just debating at my house again these ideas between what is sort of logical and what is felt, or what is aesthetic, or what is phenomenological. So that idea of the felt experience versus the thinking experience, and when do we need one set of attentions and when do we need another, and how do they overlap one with the other? That to me, it becomes absolutely central to the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I would say that for my own students, honestly, I thought that whatever they did, like before this all happened, right? Like when we're at the beginning stage of COVID and this is all like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Uh, I thought that this would be a terrible, totally not absolutely in any way explicable or uh, reasonable um, substitute for the actual experience. But you know what? I have to say, now that it's all over, man, I'm super impressed with my students, right? Like, and I don't say that lightly. Like, it's not like everything I do is great. And so therefore, like my students are, benefiting from my greatness. Like that is not happening. But I'm really happy with the work that they did. So understanding that this is not the same as being an in-person Eurythmics experience. Given that, like, let's take
Yep.
that as a whatever, as a continuation of our achievement. Yeah, they did a good job, man. They learned stuff.
That's
I'm
very cool.
super happy with them about that.
Very cool.
So all I have to say about that.
Very good. Francoise, I saw your hand up. And then Alice.
Well, I just want to come back to Nicole, what you brought up before, saying that, well, we could discuss whether what they did is really Dalcrozian or not so much, or what is the difference in the identity of Dalcroze. But when I think of Dalcroze himself being in Hellerau, let's say, and having such a wonderful time sharing his ideas with all great artists there, imagine just if he had been able to stay in Hellerau any longer than what he could. I mean, he would have found endlessly new things to do. So I'm very, well, I like to think that Dalcroze was very much open in his mind, and that we should not, as Dalcroze followers, just try to, how should I say, to restrict ourselves and to, I mean, it's everything which makes people really relate to music and to themselves and to the space and the body and whatever is Dalcroze. It's human. It's more than Dalcroze even, you know? So, and for all those people, what they could be experiencing through this music. And so it must have been wonderful. And this is already, to me, the most essential thing of it, you know?
It's very
I don't know if I make myself understandable.
No, I think it was very clear. It's very good, Francoise. Thank you. Alice?
Yes, just to say, the whole concept of orchestra is from the Greek. And I think that's why Nicole's presentation was so beautiful. A space where a chorus of dancers perform. That's what orchestra originally meant. So music was not divorced from dance in its origins, or from poetry, from language. So it really, everything brings the other to life. And you know, we shouldn't try to, as Francois said, to limit ourselves. Say, no, it has to be, this is only, and only this is kosher. No, it's really the spirit in which it was born. And I think he brought music more back to its roots. And that's what we should be trying to do.
That's very, very good. Who else now? Yes, Jeanette.
In my learning about Dalcroze, my experience is there's this component about discovery, self-discovery of your experience. You know, you experience it first and then you try to discover, oh, what did I do, or what did I sense, or what did I hear? So I'm wondering, so what is Dalcroze or what is not Dalcroze? Could it be a discovery process first and then read about it? Because I'm wondering if we read about it first, okay, somebody said this is Dalcroze, so then it's the definition, we define it already. But what if the process is start with a discovery and then let's look at what other people say and then a discussion?
Well, certainly one of the agreed upon tenets, I think maybe we could say internationally, is this notion of experience before analysis. So in a standard traditional Dalcroze classroom, the expectation, I believe, we could say is that we will do before we talk about it or before we name it or before we read about it or such. But that is not exactly the same thing as saying that we can't learn something, from these ideas in all sorts of a myriad of ways. So to talk about the difference between a sort of a traditional Dalcroze classroom where everything is, there's a wooden floor and it's sprung and we're barefoot because everything's clean and everything's easy and we have lots of room and we can hold hands and we can sing and we can do all the normal things. That's great. And we look forward to those days to come back. But I think to Nicole's point and to Francois and actually to everybody who has spoken is just that there isn't necessarily only one way, and that trying to get at, maybe below this tenet of experience before analysis, which I hold dearly to, and I know Nicole does as well, is just this idea of, well, what do we feel in the music, or how does the music engage? And as Francois listed, these notions of body, of space, of time, of community, and we could go on with a list. We've got, by my clock, 9 minutes. I'm curious, Cindy, how many have you actually made actual cards, or is the idea that it's going to become cards?
Well, at the moment, I'm in a beautiful process of writing down ideas, which tends to look like just bits of recycled paper that I've scribbled ideas on, which I then around the house and then ask my family frantically, "Where's my bits of paper?" Like that in Devil Wears Prada, where she's like, "Where's that piece of paper I had in my hand last Wednesday?" That's me. So the idea is that over the holidays, I will refine them somewhat and put them on cards. Maybe just laminate them for the moment, because I just want to trial it and see what works for teachers who don't know music and what doesn't. And then hopefully in maybe 3 years, I'll actually develop it into proper cards that people might be able to buy. But I want to make sure I've got enough sample classes first in various schools so I know what it's going to work in different settings.
Right on. You should consider crowdfunding some of the cards. I mean, you could definitely invent, 100 cards yourself, but there would be a way to sort of reach out to the VDM community and say, I gave you 5 example cards. Now give me 20 more ideas back, and then you could test them. There would be more than one way to get your 100 cards, or however many you're striving to get to. It's very nice.
And also, I'm just going to say, even though I am a musician, I'd love to test drive your cards too. So, because I'm sure there'll be great ideas.
It's very nice. Who is it Judy Cagley I see on the call? Do I see Judy? Judy, can you unmute? Let's see if Judy can.
Yes, I
Hey,
can.
there you go. There was, just because we got you here, and I'm excited to see, I don't know if everybody on the call would know, this is my dear friend and colleague, Judy Cagley, who taught in the public schools for 30 years, and she's one of our beloved and favorite Dalcroze pedagogues at Carnegie Mellon. Veronica, what was the prompt that came up on the Facebook group this week? There was something about someone was looking
Maybe
for
Rebecca
examples.
would like to ask it, because Rebecca posted on the Facebook group a question about dotted quarter eighth, and she just needed a word for it or something like that. And anyways, Stephen was like, Judy Cagley is gonna have a million answers right away.
So
Even
I think
immediately, I thought of you with fancy skip.
right, that's our ternary rhythm. I think Rebecca, do you remember how it was worded? Is this who it was? Or I think that there was a prompt that said, we're looking for songs that deal with the dotted 8/16 rhythm.
Yeah.
And was it also short, short, long, or long, short, short?
It all comes from me wanting to secretly teach Jingle Bells. I remember from 1,000 years ago when I was with Anne Farber, she, with her little twinkle, started a class with just a drum anapest and the rhythm of Jingle Bells. And so I've been playing with breaking songs down into their various rhythms. And my children, I also homeschool Cindy. And so my poor kids are my experimentation guinea pigs right now. And they're starting to realize how kind of few rhythms there are available, right? And how you can put all of them together. And so I thought, since it's holidays and why not, I would do something with Jingle Bells. And so what I like to do is improv something like on a drum and then improv something on the piano. But I also want to give them some songs that aren't Jingle Bells, but have those same rhythms in them. And so I was just kind of fishing for songs that have short, short, long in them, because that's a really common rhythm. And, you know, there really are only 7 that I could see measure rhythms in Jingle Bells. So I was designing it so you have the chorus, and then there's one extra in the verses that they can find that isn't one of the ones in the chorus. So I was just looking for songs, and then names of them, like short, short, long, short, 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 and then the poor hobble one, because it isn't a skip unless you have some kind of gigantic powers to jump really high, or a gallop. It's like a gallop in the mud or something. I didn't know what that was called. So that's where it started.
Of the ternary skip.
Say again?
Never really getting into the binary skip. I found, especially this time of the year, thinking about the song Over the River and Through the Woods, and I guess everybody might know that one, where we eventually get to singing running and skip and running and skip and wait and running and skip and running and skip and skip and skip and jump, getting that kind of a thing, so that they're, or row, row, row your boat. So those are really not necessarily the dotted quarter eighth, but you get the long short, you get the quarter eighth. And I've always, I guess there are a number of us here in Pittsburgh, we're thinking about Annabelle and Marta, that really felt that the natural skip of the child was the ternary skip, the quarter eighth, and that the dotted 8/16 was a more artificially imposed discipline kind of thing that the older kids could do if they wanted to really show off. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah.
But just thinking about row, row, row your boat and Three Blind Mice, and the ones that have the dotted quarters, the quarter eighth, the 3/8 beamed together, so that they get these different units, and learning to sing them and learning to actually clap them, step them, making lots of skips. And then as the children are older and are able to better control it, then you can go from a whole lot of running to several sets of running together, and actually make it into the song. And then if you really wanted to show off and you had the parents there that day and you had the older kids, you could have them making it going to the board and doing sort of a dictation.
Judy, something happened with your microphone right there. Can you?
I don't know.
Are you maybe covering the microphone on your iPad?
I don't know.
There you sound clear. We just lost the last sentence you said.
Yes. So where's the last part you wanted to, or I could talk for too long, but just the fact that you could actually get to the point of making vertical slashes in the air and then going to the board and making the stems of the notes to start with dictation.
Yeah.
So it can go all the way from the babies singing and rocking to the older ones doing the dictation.
It's very good. The Three Blind Mice has that same short, long.
Yes.
Of Jingle Bells. I was saying I'm like the wrong person to ask for all the repertoire that has the same rhythms. My brain doesn't catalog like that. And I know I'm sure there's people in this room who do that very well, but I'm the worst. So which is maybe one good little segue before we sign off. The Facebook. We have a small presence. There's a virtual Dalcroze little Facebook group, and our first sort of question to the community has been posted. And so if you all, might have just a minute at some point to go and check it out and maybe like it, and if you are so inclined, maybe brainstorm a little bit with Rebecca about examples of repertoire that are using certain rhythmic motifs, and maybe we can get a little community going there. Veronica, I think we're about at time. How do we need to wrap up? Do we have some final announcements?
Say thank you for being here. And if I don't know you or haven't met you or haven't interacted with you a lot, just wanted to say welcome, and we hope to get to know you, and that this is a space where we can all share. So you don't have to wait for permission or to be certified to speak or anything like that. So please, everyone, feel welcome to join in the conversation. And sign up for the masterclass with Andrew. And after that, stay tuned. Our next meetup will be in January. So we'll send out that invite soon.
And that's it, folks. It's on the hour, and we try really hard to honor everybody's time and not run over. So thank you all so much for coming. Have a wonderful New Year, rest of the December, and we will see everybody in January. At Andrew's class first, and then January. See
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it was great to see everyone. See you again soon.